You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com. Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your guaranteed authentic tickets from theticketking.com, a longtime trusted source and local Green Bay business. Just go to PackersTalk.com/tickets for more information and ticket links. That's PackersTalk.com/tickets.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans that love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and all that nonsense. We're just talking real football, and we're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, and now sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason, which there are aplenty. If you want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Please go through and do all the follows, all the social media stuff. Subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it. Those things help us a lot. It only take you a couple seconds. Tim, let me ask you for real. How are you, sir? After the roller coaster ride that was today, like, where have you landed?
I mean, I'm better now than I was, a few hours ago. It's been a lot to process today. It's been a hell of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of sinking in more, and I think the further out I'm getting from the news that happened today, processing it better, and like understanding the big picture of it all. But yeah, it was a hell of a day, with obviously the biggest news and the most important news being that Packers have re-signed Tyler Davis. I mean, did anything else happen after that?
Tim's got a sense of humor today, it sounds like. Or you haven't been on Twitter in a minute, have you?
Yeah.
Hey, re-signing Tyler Davis seems like
we're going to break all that down. That's what this whole podcast is about.
There actually might be something to take from that. They clearly love that guy on special teams, and the tight end 3 position on the Packers might be the most secure position in the entire roster. But we're gonna find out. We can get into some of that. But yeah, Goot woke up this morning and chose violence. That's what I've chalked it up to.
Yeah, just incredible day. I mean, we were talking before we went live, like, has there been a free agency day in recent Packers history like this? And I mean, if you go back to 2019, they signed the Smith brothers and Adrian Amos, Billy Turner, and that was like one after the other. And that was incredible and something they hadn't done ever since free agency started.
Right.
But today was so much different because you had the ups and downs of like, hey, they got Josh Jacobs, like, okay, that's kind of weird, but hey, we got a hell of a 2-headed monster now. Like, can you imagine him with Aaron Jones?
Well, hang on. I'll say though, as soon as I saw Josh Jacobs, I was like, oh no, Aaron Jones is gone.
Yeah, that was kind of a sign too. It was like, okay, they're still keeping him, but it seemed like maybe they are still and then became the bottom dropped out and bye Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
bye David Bakhtiari, which we were expecting, but it's still. It still hurts to see.
We were fairly braced for that, yeah.
Yeah, we were braced, but it's still, it sucks because of how good he was and what could have been if he didn't have the knee injuries. And then Xavier McKinney, which was like, that was the talk of the morning. That's been the talk of the last couple of weeks, was everybody wanted Xavier McKinney in Packers Twitter. I was right up there. Like, he was the guy. And seems to be a perfect fit for the new defense. And oh my God, they got him, like, seriously, and they outbid everybody else, and they paid him a ton of money doing it. Like, what the hell happened?
Yeah,
but
that was wild.
And just a wild day. And now it's, where do they go from here? But a process.
Well, let me ask you though. Let's come back to it. Like, just from your own perspective, did they get better or worse today?
I think, and this is a hot take, which we don't like to do. I think they're a better team today. And I don't like the Aaron Jones move. I'm never going to like cutting Aaron Jones. And we're going to dive into that. So this isn't me saying they're better without Aaron Jones. In no way are they better without Aaron Jones. But they're a much better defense with Xavier McKinney. And you have to factor in that now we should at least expect competence at the minimum from the defensive coordinator and the defensive coaching staff, with an upside to be much better than that. And their defense significantly improved today. Yes, the offense, you can say, got worse, but I don't think it was a significant step back. And when you consider everything they have there on offense with the young talent, with a new franchise quarterback, I think they're going to be okay on offense. Again, we're going to get into that. But just to answer your question, I think they're a better team today than they were, at the end of the season on paper.
On paper. I think on paper for sure. But, my heart disagrees. My heart's in the locker room going, but Aaron Jones. Like, what I can't get out of my head is the image of him picking up Dontavian Wicks' head after the fumble. It was just that felt like a very galvanizing moment for that squad. But all of those guys got them some Aaron Jones. You know what I mean? Like, they got that year with him. They got that full experience with him. So you got to believe that some of that spirit carries on, some of that leadership attitude carries on. At least you hope. But, on paper, I get it. It's a younger running back going into his prime. You got him at a reasonable price. You can't say they overpaid for him. But just such a shockingly uncharacteristic move for the Green Bay Packers. Taking a top-of-the-market free agent at running back, no less, on the first day, like kind of setting the tone for the market. Just a very uncharacteristic thing for the Packers. My comment was, I was talking to my dad when this happened. My comment to him was, I would have lost a lot of money on that because I would have bet hard against somebody that would say that was what they were going to do.
Yeah, and the running back, and then paying top of the market for a safety. Like, everybody wanted Xavier McKinney in Packers Twitter. I think we both agree we wanted him. And I think it would have made sense, like, to think, like, yeah, the Packers may be in discussion, but it would get to a certain point where they just wouldn't pay that anymore.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And then they paid it. I mean, I think he's going to be based, whatever the real contract details, and that'll come out in a few days, but based on his average per year, I think he's going to be the fourth highest paid safety. Like, they don't do that in free agency.
Man.
They don't pay for a running back. But then on the flip side, and we've talked about this before, like, we didn't expect them to go after a free agent running back. We figured the draft. They kind of have invested in running backs. They used a second-round pick on Dillon. They paid Jones a pretty good contract and kept him around where, they could have been making this move last year with Aaron Jones, but they kept him around at a pay cut, but still a decent amount for a running back at the time. So maybe they do invest a little more in the running backs than we give them credit for, I guess. But
fair enough.
A little bit. I mean, but still, the Josh Jacobs move was shocking. I wasn't too surprised that it was a running back because they had the cap money to like add somebody, and I thought maybe they'd get a cheaper veteran instead of having to go and draft two running backs. Yeah, like it's one of those, like, they can sign somebody so they're not forced to draft a running back.
Yeah,
but not like Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, like wait for that first wave to pass and then go, okay, exactly. We'll get a solid value out of a veteran guy at a decent rate. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, shockingly uncharacteristic is how I would describe that move. Mm-hmm. But my question is, how did this change so quickly? I mean, Goot at the end of the season, beginning of the offseason, that press conference he had, when he was asked about Aaron Jones, very quickly said, oh, yeah, we want him back, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, all Packers fans that listened to that, everybody was checking the box. Oh, yeah, Aaron Jones is coming back. After those comments, no doubt about it. Like, where did that get off the rails? Where do you think?
So, yeah, and I took that the same thing. Like, all right, he said it that clearly. Like, then he's bringing him back because he danced around Bakhtiari, and we kind of knew, like, all right, he's not coming back. But then he went to the combine, and he kind of brought up the contract situation with Jones too. Like, yeah, the contract, we have to work it out. And it was like, all right, you didn't say that earlier, but I still think he's coming back. But I think what it came down to is they probably went to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, with a number and said, this is what we want it to be. Rosenhaus shopped it around and figured they can get a better number. And this is 2 years in a row they're going there for a pay cut. Like, it'd be one thing if this was the first time, maybe they would have been more willing to accept the Packers number or something close to it. But probably some pride played into it, and like, haven't I done enough for you? Haven't I shown you, like, when he came back last season, how good he was at the end of the regular season and into the playoffs? Like, haven't I shown you enough? Now you're asking me for 2 years of a pay cut. And based on some of the reports, it might have been like a significant pay cut.
I saw as much as 50%.
50%. Whether that's true or not, that could be. That's definitely coming from his agent. Like,
for sure,
some of that might be.
There's a lot of games being played, but you also don't hire Drew Rosenhaus to take a hometown discount. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Like, that was the first sign. I was like, ooh, wait a second. Why do you do that?
I think there was and I think there was part of like, we're not taking another pay cut. Plus, they were shopping the number and trying to figure out, like, we can beat that on the open market. And I think the other part of that was the Packers. Like, this Josh Jacobs deal didn't come together this morning. Like, that's been in the works. So they shopped around too and found a running back who was willing to come in at their number, and that was Josh Jacobs. So they knew they had something and that they could lowball, or, maybe it wasn't a lowball, but they knew they could come in and be aggressive with Aaron Jones and say, this is what we want you to do, because they had Josh Jacobs in their back pocket. And when Jones wouldn't take that number and said no, it was kind of like, okay, we got to move on now.
Yeah. It seemed like a very quick reaction.
Yeah, it was. And it definitely, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised by it, because this is the kind of thing the Packers do. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, because they've proven when they move on from veterans most of the time. And I'm not talking about Casey Hayward or Michael Hyde, because I wouldn't even call them veterans. They were still in their prime.
But still, those two were probably the main that they were like wrong about. Yeah. Otherwise, they've been right.
But those guys were in their prime and they were getting bigger deals. Like, Jones is at the end of his career, whether, I mean, I know he's
true. That's true.
But he's at the end. And Bakhtiari's at the end, very much at the end with his injury. But when they move on from older veterans, they're usually right. So I think they deserve at least a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And I don't know it is really surprising. And I was shocked today. But now that I'm thinking about it more, it's like, maybe we shouldn't have been as surprised. But going back to your point, was like, Goot came out and said, like, yeah, he's going to be on this team, basically.
Yeah. And
now he's not. So something definitely changed. Maybe they thought they could get him at a lower number. And then Rosenhaus said, no, we're not coming in at your number.
And I can see that. I think, my thought earlier in the offseason, before we had an idea that there was some kind of, disconnect there, was take whatever money you would pay a Josh Jacobs and give it to Aaron Jones. And I think that's the heart, right? The heart's speaking a little bit, because, the locker room side of things certainly plays a factor, and everybody has said it. He's the heartbeat of that offense. But yeah, take that money and give it to him. But when you're looking at it, which Good always, I don't know what exactly he's looking at, but I'm sure he's got a view of several years out, right, where he's seeing how things line up contractually and, age-wise, whatever it may be. And he's looking at it going, wait a second, I can get a 25 or 26-year-old running back for the 4 years of his prime, probably which should be the 4 best years of his prime, for, maybe Aaron Jones on the market goes out and gets 80 a year. You think at most gets like 80 a year for 2 or 3 years. But he's probably not getting what they were paying Jacobs. What it's like came out to like 10-2, I think, something like that. Between 10 and 11 a year. So yeah, I mean, the difference between that, I get it. So you ask Aaron Jones to take $5 million a year is what it sounded like, somewhere in that ballpark. And if you can get him for that, that's a great deal. You take Aaron Jones for that for a couple years and then address running back later on. But being able to get Josh Jacobs for what they did at the price and at the time of his career, it's pretty smart. It makes a lot of sense on paper, for sure.
Yeah, and I think also you have to look at the injury factor. Like, Jones, he just missed a ton of games, and some of the games he played in, he was not 100%. And even if you go back through his career, I wouldn't say he's injury prone, but he always seems to every year get nicked up and maybe miss a couple games. He's had a lot of, MCL injuries to his knees. Like, he's been durable, but he has missed time here and there. And he's also a guy who, going back to McCarthy, and I've been shouting, and I know we've shouted on this podcast, like, give Aaron Jones the ball, but McCarthy and LaFleur have managed his workload. And I think there's a reason for that. He's a smaller back. And, they've had to do that. And that's why they invested in A.J. Dillon to be the bigger back and to kind of make it the 1A and 1B. It didn't work out that way because, Dillon just the last couple of years didn't play at that level.
Yeah.
But I think you have to look at durability too. Jacobs he's not Dillon size, but he's a bigger back, and he's really good in between the tackles. And he can take the punishment. He's had a lot of wear on the tires, but he is 25 or 26 now, I think. So he's in the prime of his career, and he's had a really good career with the Raiders. I know he's coming off a bad year, but that whole team was a mess. The offensive line was a mess.
Can't really blame that on him.
Yeah, and he got a late start. He was on the franchise tag and held out to right before the season, and that seems in most cases to affect players when they miss training camp and when they come in right at the beginning of the season. It can have effect on guys. Maybe it didn't with him, whatever it may be, but his offensive line was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And, obviously the coaching staff, McDaniels got fired there. It was a mess. But in 2022, he's a leading rusher. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. He can catch the ball too, and he can pound it between the tackles. So when he signed, it was like, cool, man. This is like thunder and lightning with him. And
he's a great player.
What a combination. And then him by himself is kind of like, okay, obviously it's a huge disappointment, Aaron Jones. But if he can bounce back, and I think he can, maybe not to the standards of 2022, but definitely above what he was in 2023, he can be a real good back for them. They have to add now in the draft, and I think they will. But, it's a good pickup. It's a good, I don't want to say fallback option, but if you're going to move on from Aaron Jones, to move on to Josh Jacobs is good. It's not like they moved on from Aaron Jones and now there's nobody and they have to draft at the position. They have a pretty good guy filling in for Aaron Jones now, or coming in for Aaron Jones.
Well, and this is where we can mention another pattern of Goots that we've talked about a few times on this podcast. But this is typically how he works, is he'll go out and get a veteran at a position, and then he'll come back around and invest draft capital at that same position. So he's done that in the past a lot. We've rattled off several of those occurrences, but he doesn't draft high he doesn't invest high draft capital without having a veteran presence at that same position. So I'm not saying he's going to go out and take a running back in the first round. I think that's highly unlikely. But, second, third round, there's some talent in this draft. And that is some stuff we were going to talk about in this episode if we end up having time.
We're getting there.
But there is some running back talent in this draft class that will be very interesting now to plug in next to a Josh Jacobs in this young offense. And see what kind of direction they go in. But we can show here, we can at least, try to look at the behavior of the GM a little bit. The positions he interviewed the most at the combine were running back and safety. The positions he moved on first today, running back and safety. So I think that he's already showing you where he intends to invest, and let's fill some holes here and see what we can do.
Yeah, and I think he got his bigger, more physical between the tackles back, and now in the draft, you can look for that. I don't want to say Aaron, because you're not going to find Aaron Jones, but
right.
You're more explosive, outside the tackles, big playback. So
and
those guys
when you have a Josh Jacobs, you can plug that guy in and not put the weight of the world on his shoulders either. It's just, hey, go out there and take 10 carries and be a home run threat. And if you don't have RB1 in that situation, that's not good.
Right. Exactly. And it'll ease the burden on whoever the rookie is, or if it's Emmanuel Wilson, who knows, it could be as your number two. But yeah, like you said, it'll ease the burden and credit. Like, I think Josh Jacobs is a little underrated as a pass catcher because he can do that. And he's also a guy, like, he'll run through you, but he can make you miss. He's got a little wiggle to him, especially when he gets to the second level. So he's not just, a hammer pound you. He can do a little bit of everything. And he was a first round pick for a reason. He's really talented. And yeah, he's a really good running back to have. But yeah, to go back to the beginning, they should still have Aaron Jones. There should have been a way to make it work.
Well, let's again, if you don't have your glass, raise a glass. I've got my coffee here. We're having some coffee late at night. To Aaron Jones, farewell, sir. Thank you for the memories. We had a great time watching you as a Packer. I would venture to say one of the greatest Packers running backs of all time. I'm not old enough to have watched the running backs of the Lombardi days, so I won't hold him up to that level of greatness. But man, is he close to that? And certainly a pleasure to have gotten to see him. So, any Aaron Jones memories that stick out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's a really good dude. Never met him. I don't know him off the field, but for being their Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, for doing all the off-field stuff with the kids, with the bike riding, with the charities, everyone, people who cover the team who don't have to say nice things about him, but they do, fans in their interactions, his own teammates, just an all-around really good dude. He carried the G. Like, if there's a Packers player who carried the G, Aaron Jones carried it more than anyone in recent memory. And he's up there, like you said, he's one of the best backs of all time. And I wouldn't say that because it's the greatest franchise in the history of football. And there's been a lot of great backs in Packers history. So I don't take that lightly. He is one of the best backs in their franchise history. And just an all around great leader. And his a memory, just the most recent memory, how well he played this year down the stretch.
No doubt.
How big of an impact it made for that team to get into the playoffs and win a playoff game, and the leadership he showed on a young offense. Just incredible. He's a great representative of the team, and incredibly, that's the guy, like, you show, like, that's a Green Bay Packer. And,
absolutely.
There's a lot of knuckleheads in the NFL and in sports. Like, he was not that. That's the dude you put up on a pedestal and say, like, as an incoming rookie, be like Aaron Jones. Like, that's our guy. So.
Yeah, well, and that's why I made that comment earlier. Hopefully this group of young guys on this offense, having been around Aaron Jones, will be better off in their careers for it. I think they will, but couldn't agree more, man. Absolutely. I think the way he played this season really was an excellent encapsulation of his career with the Packers, and it was just awesome, man. Fun to watch, electric, a difference maker with the ball in his hand, upstanding human being, all of the great things, and I do hope that he ends up being one of those guys that it just ends up being around Green Bay forever. There's a few of them, Leroy Butler's still out there running around and doing stuff like that, but I sure do. Maybe he's going to get into coaching. I think he's probably got some leadership to bestow on some young men coming up these days, but we'll see. Definitely wish the best to Aaron Jones. Grateful to have had him as a Packer, and excited to see what the rest of his career holds. And while we're doing salutes, let's salute another great Packer. Farewell to David Bakhtiari. Glasses up to him. Yeah. Guy carried the G. And if I can lead this one off and just say, the thing that I will always just remember, it'll be burned in my mind when someone says David Bakhtiari, is just him flipping the bird to the Bears fans at Soldier Field this last season. What a beautiful moment. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Talk about carrying the G, like going out by whooping the Bears' ass and flipping the bird. Like, goodness gracious, man.
Was there anybody? I mean, he was California, dude, but was there anybody more Wisconsin than him? Like, flipping the bird to the Bears, going to the Bucks games and
crushing beers. Oh man, absolutely.
Wearing 69, he was always entertaining with his quotes and whatever he was doing. Like, he was just a dude, and he could back it all up on the field. Like,
absolutely, one of the greatest left tackles in Packers history. While we're talking about all-time greats, he really is. And
you never had to worry about him. And ask for, there's a ton of memories with him too, but like, my first one being his rookie year. They had moved Brian Bulaga from right tackle to left tackle in the preseason. Bulaga was going to be a left tackle. Tears his ACL in family night. The next guy up is Bakhtiari. Who the hell is this dude?
Couldn't even pronounce his name, man.
Right. Bakhtiari, whatever. 4th round rookie from Colorado. Like, this dude's going to be our left tackle protecting Rodgers. Like, oh no. And from there, just, Packer Hall of Fame career. Yeah, the rest is history. Packer Hall of Fame career. And you never, as long as he played a game, you never had to worry about what he was doing. It didn't matter the pass rusher he was going up, and he saw some great ones over the years. Like,
oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
You never were like, man, how's Bakhtiari going to block this guy? Like, you just never worried.
No.
And he was just a stud. And
I'll go as far to say he would be a Hall of Famer if he'd won a championship.
Yeah, if he didn't get hurt, he's a Hall of Famer for sure.
Yeah.
And I think if he didn't get hurt, there's a good chance they would have won a championship in either 20 or 21. And that's what sucks. And so I'm glad for him. I'm so glad he got paid before he got hurt. And it really, the dude's been through a lot with all these knee injuries and surgeries and everything like that. And I hope he can make it back and play. I'm sure we can guess where he's going to end up playing next season if he does play. Whatever. I just hope he can make it back healthy and finish his career, not on the injured list, and, be able to go out on his terms, whatever they may be. But yeah, an all-time great Packer. And that's what makes this day so emotional and so crazy as a Packer fan. It's two of the all-time greats gone in one day. And we knew Bakhtiari was coming.
Yeah.
We've known that for a while now. And it, again, from the Packers' point of view, the way it makes sense. They couldn't pay him the cap number, the cash that was owed to him this year. They have a replacement, Rasheed Walker. And you can't count on a 32-year-old with a bad knee. It just didn't make sense. So we knew this one was coming, but it still sucks to see a guy like Bakhtiari no longer a Green Bay Packer.
It does. It does. We will. I will miss him. He was one of my all-time favorite
one of the
Packers,
favorites,
man.
Yep.
For sure. So thank you to David Bakhtiari. You probably will never see this, but really appreciated watching you as a Packer, man. What great memories we've got there. If we get bored enough this offseason, we'll just have to go through all these guys and do just like a fan appreciation podcast for all of them. But
absolutely.
No, so great memories. Very, very polarizing day to see two all-time greats go. But, yeah, man, welcome in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. Holy crap. Talk about Packers Twitter building their own roster. The demand for Josh Jacobs was massive on Packers Twitter, and the Xavier McKinney buzz was huge. I was hard skeptical about Josh Jacobs, but real skeptical about Xavier McKinney, and here we are. So, as I mentioned, Goot woke up and chose violence, but do you have any thoughts about Xavier McKinney and how he fits in here?
It's crazy to think if they didn't cut Aaron Jones today, we would be going crazy about Xavier.
That's true. We probably could get over David Bakhtiari.
Yeah, we would, because that was expected, and it still sucks, and it's still, you hate it. But if Aaron Jones wasn't cut, everybody be going. I feel like Xavier McKinney's kind of forgotten right now, which is hard to believe. They're paying him $17 million a year or whatever it's going to end up truly being. This is the guy we all wanted, and he's in the prime of his career. I think he turns 25, or is it either 25 or 26 in August? He's in the prime of his career.
He's 25 in August, because I think he's 24 right now.
He's only a year older than Anthony Johnson Jr. They just drafted last year, which is kind of crazy, but he's the guy everybody wanted. And they went out and got him. And like you said, I was kind of skeptical about it, just because I figured they probably want him. They're probably interested. And, they're always in the conversation, according to Goody. But I'm once the number, it's just going to be too much for them. And there's so many teams that need safeties. There's teams with more cap space that needed safeties. I just figured they're not going to pay top of the market for a safety. It's just going to get too high for them. And then this morning there was tweets they're interested. The Eagles are interested. I'm just nah, they're probably using the Packers as leverage a little bit, or the Packers are in it, but it's probably at a certain point where they can't go any further. And then they did it. And it's incredible. That was the bomb of the day. And I don't want to say he's a perfect fit, because nothing's perfect, but if you were, he's the best fit among the free agents. It's not a great draft for safeties. He's the best available fit. And if you look around the league, he's probably one of the best overall safeties, period. But he's one of the best safeties for what they want to do in Hafley's defense. He's done everything for the Giants. He's played deep. He's covered in the slot. He's played press. He's played in the box. They moved him all around, and he's been really good at all of it. He can tackle. He can create takeaways. I mean, for what it's worth, he was a captain, so he was viewed as a leader on that team too. So he can help your locker room. Like
exactly,
you're paying a guy in the prime of his career, and I think that's what you want to do in free agency. You don't want to pay a guy for what they've done in the past. You want to pay your guy for what they're going to do.
What they're about to do, yeah.
Yeah, and that's if you go back to Preston and Zadarius Smith and Adrian Amos, they got those guys at the right time in their careers. They're doing the same thing here with McKinney, and I think it's an absolute home run of a pick. I think he's going to fit in great in the new defense. I mean, he's the guy, like if you can construct a safety from scratch for what you want, for what Hafley said he wants in his defense, that safety would end up being Xavier McKinney. Like it's a home run. So go out and get another one, whether it's a free agent that can play in the box a little bit or you draft one, whatever it may be. They still need another one, but that's a home run, and incredibly excited for what he can do for this defense.
Yeah. Well, and Ainsley was his coach at Alabama, right?
He recruited him, yeah. So there's that tie there. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of personal ties that are coming into these decisions, which right, wrong, or indifferent, we're going to find out how that goes. But yeah, both of them fit that mold, right? They're coming into their prime. They're being paid for what they're about to do. They're both off to an excellent start in their career. And again, we should expect now Goot to invest early draft capital at the running back and safety positions. Like he's followed this pattern before. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really pumped to see here, in Goot we trust. In the past, there have been moves where we think they moved on too soon. I remember Sitton was kind of a surprising one. Like, what? Wait, he's getting rid of him now? There's been a lot of shocking ones where your heart's not okay with it, but on paper it ended up being the right move. So it seems like I'm at least willing to give it that benefit of the doubt, and like I said, we'll miss Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, but very, very excited about these two moves that were made today. And so now, I mean, do you think they're done in free agency? You think they got more to go?
That's a really good question. I mean, they know what the cap numbers are going to be. We don't quite know yet until these contracts get leaked out over the next couple of days. I saw Jacobs' numbers come out, but we don't really know the true numbers on McKinney. But from everything I've seen, Ken Ingles is great. It seems like they still have the money to be able to do what they want to. My initial thought was no, I think they're still going to be a guy active. I don't think they're going to be at the top of the market like Xavier McKinney, but I definitely think whether it's this week or maybe they let the market settle down and it's next week or the week after, whatever, I still think they're going to add from outside the organization. The likely spots to me are linebacker, maybe another safety, and possibly cornerback. Those would be the spots. So no, to answer your question, I don't think they're done yet. I wouldn't expect a Xavier McKinney type deal, but I could see them adding another starter and possibly some depth to go along with that. So expect more. It might not be major fireworks, but definitely I think they can do more. I think they need to do more.
I have a hard time providing any input because, like I said, how wrong I was about Josh Jacobs. Man, that was the one that was like, no way, not happening. No way they would spend money on running back right now. No way.
I didn't think so either.
So the next to that, the second probably least likely in my opinion would have been cornerback. I just don't think you need to invest in a veteran cornerback at this point. You've got Jair, you got Stokes, you got Valentine now. You just need more bodies there, more talented bodies for sure. So maybe early draft capital, but I just don't see them investing in a veteran cornerback at this point. But we'll see, man. Buckle up, because my one comment on Twitter was also throw predictability out the window at this point, because signing one of the top running backs in the free agent market is one of the least characteristic things the Packers have ever done right now, in my opinion. Is there maybe there's a few folks watching, jump in the comments. Is there something else that comes to mind that was just like wildly uncharacteristic or unpredictable that they did that just like today? I mean, losing Aaron Jones and picking up Josh Jacobs is just such a whiplash is the word I'm looking for. But let us know what y'all think. It's hard not to be excited about it, though, to see what happens next, because there's still a lot of really good free agents out there.
It's only the first day, as crazy as it's been.
Yeah.
It's been a hell of a month in one day. But there's some good guys out there, and I think there's going to be value because I know it's the first day, but like a lot of guys are getting signed or they're agreeing they can't officially sign yet until Wednesday. But
of course,
the market dries up pretty quick, and then you start getting agents and players that start, taking what they can. I don't want to, they get a little desperate, and there's guys that you can find value on. So I could definitely see linebacker. I think it's a need, and if we get in, we're going to get into it eventually with the linebackers in the draft. But if they can get another linebacker, if they can get us, and there's been some safeties that have signed today, but there's still some good ones out there that you may be able to get at a cheap price now. Safety and
I don't bring Ford back for that matter. I mean, he wasn't a bad safety last year.
Yeah, I could see that, or Owens. And they have no depth on the offensive line. I think that's a position they're going to draft, and I think they're going to draft it heavily. I could see 3 of them now getting drafted, but they have no depth on the offensive line. So I wonder if somebody shakes loose that, could play. Maybe he could challenge at right guard, or if not, he can be some kind of swing tackle and guard, something like that gives them some depth, but it will come cheap for them because there are a lot of guards that got paid today, including John Runyon Jr., who
Good for him, man.
Yeah, good for him, but no way would I want the Packers to commit that kind of contract for John Runyon Jr., but good for him. But anyway, I could see them maybe adding a depth offensive lineman in free agency, more likely to draft. But yeah, there's still plenty of good players out there, and there's going to be more guys that are going to get cut too.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the list of linebackers. I mean, I could just rattle off a bunch of names, but most of y'all know the names of the free agent linebackers that are out there. And so, yeah, that is a position I could see in offensive line as well. One thing that I will stake out there, because this was earlier this morning before the free agent stuff started happening, but I know a lot of folks jumped in on, we could trade for T. Higgins, the idea of trading for T. Higgins because he's asking for a trade. And that's where I'm like, no, I'm still out. I'll die on that hill if I have to. I'm hard out on that. No, I just don't see it happening. Don't see them investing. You'd have to invest premium draft capital there. You'd have to send a premium player probably.
And then you got to pay him.
You got to pay him
$25 million a year, whatever he's going to want as a franchise tag receiver. No.
And your room is already so good, and they know how good their room is. Let's be honest, right? They know how good that is. So
and he's not the no doubt about it number one receiver. Like he's a low level number one or a high 2.
Yeah.
No, there's no way I would. That was on Twitter. No way. I don't think they would do it anyway. But no, it makes no sense.
And these are the guys that, again, throw predictability out the window. Prepare for the
who knows, I guess. I mean.
But yeah, I couldn't see it happening.
No.
It wouldn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, so that's where I think, Goot will surprise us by maybe taking a receiver in the first round of the draft. As far as like investing in these positions that you don't think he will invest in these places, right? Like investing in a free agent running back. It just doesn't, they don't ever do it. They never have. That's the move that I could see them making is a first round receiver. And it's a deep class. It's insanely deep. And that's why I say that, because you get to 25 and a receiver is very likely best player available. Maybe offensive line. But that's another thing they don't do a whole lot of is drafting offensive line in the first round. So a lot of unpredictability ahead, it seems like. But that, to me, feels like where they would invest draft capital and cornerback as well, and where we probably could expect free agents as linebackers and O-line.
Yeah, or maybe another safety too. But I agree with you. I was kind of expecting a linebacker. I don't know if I should expect it now, but I was kind of expecting safety and linebacker for them to hit in free agency. So we'll see, because those are positions in the draft that aren't very good. They're kind of weak and not deep. So you should attack it in free agency, and then you can always double dip in the draft if there's a player there that you like, but don't force yourself because those are positions of need. So go out there and attack it like they have in the past.
Yeah, and that's where these things are fun, right? It's mock draft season. Everybody just puts their mock drafts out.
Yeah.
I haven't done a single mock draft yet. I'm actually I think I'm just going to put my stake out there. I'm not going to do this and maybe do one like right before the draft. But I see people trading back I see people do a lot of this trading back, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. First of all, you've got 11 draft picks right now. You don't need 11 rookies on this roster right now. Like, you think about this is a roster that is mostly 2 and 3 year players at this point, and you just got a lot younger on the offense by losing Aaron Jones. You don't need 11 rookies here. So if anything, I'd expect them to consolidate that draft capital. That doesn't necessarily mean moving up in the first round. It might mean moving up in the second round or in the third round. But yeah, I would expect that, or using some of that capital to go after another veteran on another team. That's specifically what Good, I think, has alluded to a few times.
A couple times, which is surprising. I don't know who's out there who we would go for. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe. So there's, I think, a lot to come, but the thing I don't expect is them to be trading back to get more picks. Like, that just seems wildly unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I could kind of see it both. Like, I'm with you. I agree, but I could also see a scenario where they think, there's a lot of players between, say, 20 and 50 who are kind of similar and similarly graded, where they can drop back and get an extra pick in that range, get 2 guys, above what they're already getting, and then take their later picks and maybe package them and move around in the middle of the draft, because it's, from what everybody's saying, it's not a real deep draft overall. Part of that is because so many underclassmen stayed in college instead of coming out. So maybe they're be looking to trade some of their day 3 picks and move around in the 4th round or the 3rd round, whatever it may be. And he, accumulates and can move around and move the board. Maybe that's the scenario. But yeah, I mean, if they come out with 11 picks, that would be a lot. And that'd be a lot of roster spots to find, which maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it just seems like their roster is getting pretty deep at certain positions where they don't need maybe 11 rookies coming in.
No, but you could use some high quality depth where you are going to invest, and that's where I think you're right. And what I was saying is more on a net basis. Like, you go into the draft with 11 picks, you come out with maybe 7. Where you consolidated that, whatever. Like I said, throw predictability out the window. But yeah, I would expect a lot of investment in O-line, because there are some spots you can upgrade there. But also the depth would be nice to have. We've seen it, right? Last year the O-line went from a strength to a weakness really quick early in the season with some injuries, and then they got stronger as they came back. But I think that they see that as a hole that they need to fill across the board. And we've talked about what they like in the O-line. They like these guys that can play any of these positions, probably for that reason, right? Like, yeah, we'll draft you. You could play center. You could play guard. Whatever. But we need you to be able to jump in there and play. And there's a lot of those guys available.
Yeah, and let's protect the franchise quarterback. Like, we gave them. They've given them weapons. They've given them receivers, young tight ends who look really good and very promising for the future. Let's protect them long term too. So invest in the offensive line. The depth isn't there right now. You certainly need competition at right guard, probably need it at center as well. Invest in the offensive line, build it up, and make that, a big strength to your team. And I think where they're drafting, and it's still a ways out, and now free agency is going to shake some things up, but where they're drafting in the first round, there's a lot of those offensive linemen who are kind of, are they a tackle? Are they a guard? Or are they a center? Like, they're good football players, but you're like, where do they fit? So it'll be interesting, like, where Green Bay sees him fitting, because they may see him still as a tackle, where their team see him as a guard. They may see him interior, but they may really like him. And maybe that's the next big surprise. Like, they could take an interior offensive lineman in the first round. They don't do that. They haven't done that in a long time. But maybe that's the next big shocker. I mean, they didn't take off-ball linebackers, and then all of a sudden, Quay Walker, like, that was a huge surprise. So
yep.
Maybe it's, a Graham Barton or somebody like that who was a college tackle, but he certainly looks like he's going to be a center or maybe even a guard. Maybe they just really like him as a football player. And it's like, we'll bring him in, we'll figure out his position, but we just really like him, whether he's tackle, guard, or center.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense that that they would invest in that area. But there's a lot of opportunity to do it. That's what I'm saying. So, like, if they're doing stuff that's unpredictable right now, drafting O-line in the first round would qualify as that. And there's also a good case to be made that around 25, again, with the maneuverability to go up and down a few spots, offensive line could be best player available. And I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. They've shown as much. I mean, they kind of talked about that process with Jordan Love, how, look, he was the last first-round graded prospect they had on their board, and he was pretty highly graded for where he was falling to. So, other than that, it was him or trade back. And, so if they really are thinking that way and moving that way, it really looks like the board will shake out, or very realistically could shake out, that offensive line and receiver could be best player available in that area. So we'll see,
That's a good point. I definitely could see an offensive lineman there being best player available, and they do what they say they always do, which is take the best player available.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on day 2 and day 3, day 2 with round 2 and round 3, there's a lot of fun to be had because there is a lot of value in that place, right? And that's across the board. That's at offensive line, that's at running back, that's at linebacker. I'm kind of starting to segue us a little bit into our draft coverage. But even, receiver, DB, there is depth in this draft, and it may not dip into day 3 as much as day 2, but day 2 depth is a lot of fun to look at for sure. Do you want to lead us off with some linebackers to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I'll go over some, real quick as we get into it. I think my overall feeling on the linebacker class is go out there and get one in free agency. I don't think it's a great linebacker class. There's some guys, and you can always find players. There's going to be some solid linebackers that come out of this draft. I just don't think there's very many of them. I think they're hard to find. I'd feel much more comfortable if they went out and got a free agent and then dipped their toes into the draft and, picked a guy that they liked, if there was somebody that was on the board for them.
Is there a free agent you have in mind? Like, who are you thinking?
So he already signed with Houston, but I'm going to mispronounce his name, Aziz Al-Shaair. He played with the Niners. He played last year at Tennessee.
Yeah.
So he kind of knows the system that it looks like the Packers want to play, the 49er system. But he signed with Houston today. And Jerome Baker, who's, again, if we're talking about connections to the coaching staff, he played Miami. We just hired Miami's linebacker coach. So maybe he's a possibility. He's still out there.
He was one of
solid player. Yeah, he's a solid player. I mean, he's not like, going to make a Pro Bowl or anything like that or all pro, but he's a solid player and would be a nice addition. It's not a great free agent class at linebacker either, but I'd like to see them add somebody there because it's not a very good class in the draft. Having said that, I do really like Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. If they took him in the second round, I think that's the spot to take him. I don't think he's a first round kind of player, but if, being at the end of the first round, it's not that big of a deal. I think he's probably the most complete linebacker that there is. There's some, there's linebackers that have really good speed and athletic ability. I just don't know how good their instincts are and their awareness, or how good they would be taking on the run. And then there's other guys who probably are good run guys, but would get exposed in coverage. I think Cooper may be the most complete of those guys. Plus, he's got good size, and he's a good athlete, and he was productive. Go back and watch him against Alabama last season. He was awesome in that game. He was rushing the passer. He was taking on the run. He was covering Alabama's quarterback, Jalen Milroe, who's a great running threat at quarterback. He was running him down, which was awesome to see. I think he could play middle linebacker so that Quay Walker could play the weak side. Maybe Quay would be the middle and he'd be the weak side, whatever. Figure it out. But I like him the best. He's got long arms. He's got good size. He's athletic, and he was productive. So he would be my number one guy. Again, second round guy. Peyton Wilson, we talked about him last week because he was one of the standouts at the combine.
I like him, man. He excites me.
He's big, and I mean, we talked about he was a standout at the combine. His athletic ability was through the roof.
Yeah.
And he also was productive in college. The problem was he's had multiple knee surgeries and knee injuries. He's had a shoulder injury. There's probably some other stuff in there that hasn't necessarily been reported, but he's got a long injury history. So that's why I'm like, I don't I don't see the Packers taking him. Like maybe if he's there on day 3, it's a day 3 pick. What the hell? They're take him and take a shot on him, even if they're concerned about his medicals. But to take him in the 2nd round or maybe even the 3rd round, I just don't see. I don't see the Packers doing it. Even though he tested through the roof and he's got the RAS score and the athletic ability that they love, they don't usually take guys with that long of a medical history that he has. But if you ignore the medicals, I think he's damn good and would be a really nice prospect to have. And again, like, I don't know if he'd be a true middle linebacker. So it's almost like you have 2 weak side linebackers. So how are you going to figure out Quay Walker and Peyton Wilson? But to me, it would be like, it's a good problem to have. Figure it out, come up with a system where you're going to play them both at the same time. So I like him. The medicals are the big red flag. And then just to hit on a couple other guys, kid from Michigan, Junior Colston. I think there's some upside there. He kind of does a little bit of everything. Not sure how how ultimately stand up in the NFL in coverage, but played really good football for Michigan. He was a leader on that team. He plays really physical. If you play for Michigan on defense, really on offense too, you have to be a physical player there.
He won a national championship.
Yeah. He's got the pedigree. I like him. I think he could come in and be a solid linebacker. I don't think you're ever going to be like wowed by him, but he could be a real solid complement to Quay Walker. Maybe he's more of like a stabilizer, and Quay Walker could be the guy who can fly around and go nuts with his athletic ability. So yeah, he wouldn't be a bad 3rd round pick, maybe 2nd round, something like that. And then a couple other guys I just want to touch on. So Cedric Gary from North Carolina tested really well. He's a really good athlete.
Great athlete. Yep.
Yeah. Don't know how good he's going to be against the run. And I don't know how good his instincts are, but I think he can fly around and make plays. Probably doesn't fit as a middle linebacker ultimately in this scheme. But again, he's a guy you may take a chance on and just say the athletic ability's there and the upside potential is there. Maybe we just take a chance on developing him and turning him into more than what he looks like right now. Jeremiah Trotter.
Real quick on that one, and this is something somebody else had called out before, but Goot has been known to take guys that have had better seasons than their most recent.
That's
right.
True.
So in this case, it looks like Cedric Gray, that was his situation where his 22 is actually looked like it was better than 23. But still.
And their whole defense there stinks in North Carolina.
There's only so much you could put on the player.
Right.
But it's still, he played pretty consistently. There were 2 stinker games he had. I'd like to go back and look at those, Georgia Tech and Duke. But, he's an interesting one that I've kind of – he's one of those I'm kind of like in my back pocket hoping for because he's a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, he really is. And I think the coverage ability and potential is there with him. And then another dude who popped up at the combine was Trevin Wallace from Kentucky, who, from everything I read about him, he was like, there was questions about could he cover, and then he tested with a RAS score of 9.64, which is awesome.
Sheesh.
He tested through this roof, so it's like, so he can't cover with a RAS score like that. I don't know. So that's one I want to dig into more because he certainly, with that athletic ability, you better be able to cover. Like, what's the problem there if you can't? So maybe he's worth a look on day 3 as well. But to me, if you're looking for somebody to come in and immediately start with Quay Walker, which right now I think they would be, unless you really believe in Isaiah McDuffie, to me, the best guy to hope for is Edgerrin Cooper. I like him. I think he's the most complete guy. And I think there's a lot of potential for him to be a real solid linebacker and a nice tandem, a nice complement to Quay Walker.
What I wrote down about him was he's flat out mean. And he looks mean. There's I don't know. It's been so long since I played football now, but like I just remember some guys when I played, I was like, that guy's freaking mean, dude. Like he's just out here to like be a jerk to people, and that's what he looks like. And that you want that in a linebacker, man. Like you want that attitude, and that's what he looks like.
And he's not like he's 6'2", 230, which isn't huge, but that's about Quay Walker size. But he's got 34-inch arms, which I think is part of what makes him look bigger than he really is. And he ran well at the combine. And if you put on the tape, he runs well. Like, he's got football speed too.
Yes.
More so than even track speed.
Yeah, and I mean, you can glean some of that from testing, but not all of it, right? And actually, there was a neat visual at the combine where it showed, I think guys were running the receiver gauntlet. I believe it was Keon Coleman, and was it the receiver from Oregon? Anyway, it was, the bottom line was Coleman was running, and he ended up running a faster miles per hour through the gauntlet than the guy who ran a faster 40 than him. And I think it was significant. It was like a 4.6 versus a 4.4. So you got to see that illustration of that play speed right there at the combine, which was pretty interesting. You haven't gotten to see that before.
Yeah, I saw it. I know exactly. Yeah, he ran a 4.6, and then he was awesome through the gauntlet. And the same
he
thing
got up to, I
happened.
think, 20 miles per hour in the gauntlet. He's one of the fastest ones.
Yeah, which is what you want to see more so than a 40. And that was, go back to another receiver last year, Puka Nacua. The same thing happened. He didn't run a great 40, but he was great in the gauntlet. And you saw what he did as a rookie with the Rams, who was set records as a rookie receiver.
Well, it's always important to remember that the greatest receiver of all time ran a 4.7 at his combine. And T.O., I think, ran a 4.6. So
T.O. wasn't fast either. Some
of the greatest receivers ever were not fast. Randy Moss was pretty fast. But anyway, so speed doesn't always kill, but it does sometimes. Yeah, Edgerrin Cooper would be one that I think would be a lot of fun to see as a Packer. Just another mean guy back there. He's got a solid vertical jump, solid broad jump. Like you said, athleticism scores, but he would be a lot of fun to watch. Any kind of sleeper folks at linebacker to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so there was I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name, but he's from Washington. He blew up the combine as well. He's a little undersized, but the athletic testing was incredible. Kind of came from, so he's a third day pick, and he may be nothing more than just a special teams guy that can fly down there and kick coverage. But to have that kind of testing number, maybe he's got the ability to come in there and be like a specialty coverage linebacker, almost like what Oren Burks could have been. Like, go in there, cover the backs, cover the tight ends, use your athletic ability and fly around. We'll see. But I think he's, it's just his RAS score and his numbers from the combine just really stood out. So he's worth another look. He's one that stood out. And then
let's see if I can.
I mentioned Wallace from Kentucky, so that would have been my other one. But some of like the day 3 guys. There's a kid I got to give a shout out. He went to my school, Temple University, Jordan McGee. If he's drafted, it's going to be late on day 3, but he had a really good combine as well. And he's an athlete. He flies to the ball, can move around. He's a little undersized, but really good athlete. May just be a special teams only guy, but he went to Temple, so I got to give him a shout out.
Oh, no. There we go. And we're back. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Nice, man. Well, yeah, and so it's kind of I don't want to say bad things, but it's just not a great class at linebacker this year in this draft. So I would expect Goot to make a move in free agency at linebacker. I would probably expect him to invest higher draft capital on that, day 2, maybe day 1. We'll see what ends up happening. There's always some shock in the draft, right? All the media, everybody thinks they know kind of where guys generally are, and there's always some shakeup with that. So you can't rule out a guy being taken at the end of day 1. The other thing about that, and I think this is relatively new, but we're starting to see it happen, is there's a little bit of a shakeup at the end of day 1, because at the end of day 1, you have a whole night to negotiate before round 2 starts. So, if you think that there's a guy at the beginning of round 2 that people are going to be jockeying for, you better go get him at the end of round 1. So there might be some reaches that happen there, especially with this linebacker class, because it's just not a great one. So you might see some reaching happening there. But there's some good athletes in this class at linebacker. So it's not like you got to get one or two or you're out. Like there's a few to choose from, and they're going to have access to them. They're going to have access to the best linebackers in this class. They're not going to be going in the top 5 or top 10. So there's that. And that's where I throw my hands up and say, in Goot we trust, because these guys have been incredible scouts. They've done a great job the last 2 drafts. So I just sit back and enjoy and look forward to seeing who they bring in. But we'll spend a few minutes on running backs. We might have to save the meat of the running backs for next week, because we're getting a little bit long. We had more to talk about on free agency than we really expected to.
Yeah, weren't expecting that. And running back's going to be important, because they're definitely drafting a running back for sure, which we figured anyway. But then I guess there was that brief moment where, they have Jones and Jacobs. Maybe they won't draft a running back.
But no, I think it's almost certain now that they will draft a running back. Yeah. I think the question becomes when and what are they looking for in that running back? And clearly when they drafted A.J. Dillon, it was not to be the next Aaron Jones, right? There was a different plan for those two types of running backs. So you've got your Josh Jacobs now. What is the complementary style of running back that they would want? And I think that's a big question mark that, we can all start playing with, as our amateur scouts, right, on the internet. But my opinion, I think that this running back class is being undervalued by the devaluation of the position in the NFL. This looks like a really good running back class. You look at the top, you're like, yeah, you don't have the big star power at the top, but you just keep going down the list. You're like, hey, he's pretty good. He's pretty good too. No, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. And you get through and you're like, geez, there's actually a pretty decent number of pretty good running backs in this draft. And there's some small school guys to keep an eye on. There's certainly even, the kid out of Washington's a little bit deeper in the draft, but he's one that I think is could be a sleeper, Dylan Johnson. So we're going to get into some of these guys. We can go a little deeper into them next week, but one that I want to call out, obviously at the top, we can say Jonathan Brooks and Jalen Wright are probably your top 2 running backs in this class. It's splitting hairs on who's RB1, RB2. I'm not going to get into that. But I will say Jalen Wright to me looks like more of a big home run threat. He looks a little bit faster. And Jonathan Brooks to me looks like he's got better vision for what that's worth. And maybe we can split those hairs in the next episode. But Jalen Wright is one that I think is very interesting now for the Packers to keep an eye on, or Packers fans to keep an eye on, because he is a home run waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of that, there's definitely room for improvement. But he relies on his athleticism, which there is plenty. And he is just a home run waiting to happen, home run in a bottle. When you're relying on that guy to be RB1 for your team, it's probably not fair. But now that he's not, that might be an awesome pick for the Packers. So it's just one to keep an eye on. It's hard to even say where these guys will go, because, again, you don't know what's going to happen there in the back half of the first round, where guys start reaching to make sure that they get their guy. There's certainly have been surprises with Detroit drafting their running back last year a lot earlier than people thought, and they're still pumped about that. I mean, they were celebrating that. So you just never know where they've got these guys on their boards. So I don't think you can rule out a running back in the first round. I think media consensus would call that a wild reach. But you're going to have teams that want and need a running back. So, so I think it wouldn't be a shocker, but otherwise you probably have access to the top running back in this draft early in the second round. So it's another one where the Packers are sitting there looking at this like, great. We've got access to the entire class here. What do we value the most? What skill set do you value the most? That probably changed today. Like with going from Aaron Jones to Josh Jacobs, the skill set that they value the most coming out of this draft might have changed. And I think it probably still goes in a similar style that they had before, where you had Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, big and little. Lightning and Thunder, essentially, for those that remember the old Giants. But what was that, 2007 when they had that three-headed monster at running back?
Yeah, was it Brandon Jacobs and Derek Ward, and who's the other one that I'm missing? Bradshaw.
Bradshaw, that's the one. I knew there was one. Yeah, they had a great monster there. But there was some thunder and lightning going on, and I think that the Packers are looking for a little bit of that, less of the track meet that like maybe is going on down in Miami and San Francisco, where it's just like, can you run a 4.3 40? Great, there you go, get in the backfield. But there's a lot of styles available in the draft too. You've got these home runs and waiting to happen here, kind of at the top. But then you've got the Blake Corums out there, and Blake Corum's an interesting one. He's a smart player, man, and he's one of those guys that might just have a really long NFL career for his football intelligence. And he's not the most athletic, right? He's not the fastest. He's not the most anything. But he got great balance, great vision. He seems like he's got high football intelligence. So he's one that to keep an eye on. And then I can't do a running back segment without mentioning, the hometown favorite in Braylon Allen. And I think Braylon Allen, interestingly enough, still fits pretty complimentary to Josh Jacobs in this offense. And what I would say, them going after Josh Jacobs, I think it says a lot about where they view the entire running back market, right? So you look at this, you go, okay, well, we're going to be without Aaron Jones. Is that okay to go into this season with a rookie or a couple rookies back there that we're relying on? And when you look at some of these guys, a Blake Corum maybe is different, right? He's 23. Braylon Allen is a child. And that's no offense to Braylon Allen. But he can't buy beer yet, right? Think about your 20-year-old self. Were you ready to be the leading running back for an NFL team? Not me. So that's where I'm looking at this going, he's a freak, first of all. He's 6'2", 245, running the way that he does. He's an absolute freak, but he's a child. And that's not a guy that you want like taking a leadership position on your team. But again, you put him next to a guy who's 5 years older than them, been there, done that in the league. Now you got something. That may be a little bit different. So if there's anyone that I still think would be a fun one to see the Packers draft, and there actually seems to be a fit and a possibility as far as the access is, where the player will go in the draft. Braylon Allen fits it, man. You probably get him in round 3 or 4 still. I think it depends again on who values what style. The bigger guy, he might be the best big back in this class. What you define as a big back, there's a gray line there. You could call Isaac Guerendo a big back at 6'1", 225, and you might have to call him the best big back in the class. But at 6'2", 245, I feel like Braylon Allen's in a bit of his own class as far as big backs go. But I'm trying to pull up his combine numbers. They weren't probably what he wanted, but again, at his size, it's like still pretty stinking good. I think it was like a 4.5 or a 4.6. Dude, do you know what he ran? Man, it's not even coming up on here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even sure.
Maybe he didn't run.
Yeah, he might not have ran, but
okay. But anyway,
it would certainly be interesting to have, Braylon Allen with Josh Jacobs. That's two big backs. I mean, obviously Jacobs isn't Braylon Allen big or AJ Dillon big, but he's big and physical. Ain't nobody going to want to tackle those guys, that's for sure.
Right.
But I go back to kind of like what Goody's previous comments were when he had Aaron Jones, was like they wanted to find a bigger back to go with Aaron Jones. Well, now you kind of have that bigger back, who's a big improvement over AJ Dillon. Maybe they're going for, I don't want to say smaller back because I don't think they're going to take a small back, but now maybe you're going for that elusive big play threat guy like they had in Aaron Jones. Maybe that's what they're looking for.
And that's why I think Jalen Wright is a very interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And if they're going to be look, going after Josh Jacobs is about as aggressive as you can be in addressing your running back situation. I don't think that there's a more aggressive move at this point.
Absolutely.
If you're going to be that aggressive and maintain that aggressiveness into the draft, Yeah, I'd say that they're probably going to make a move for Jalen Wright, and again, I don't think that he's your best player available in that end of the first round. So I don't know that I'm predicting them to take him at 25. But yeah, in the second round, when you got pick 41, or if you're maneuvering around in the second round, I definitely got a big watch flag on him. Jonathan Brooks is right up there, man. He's the same thing, but he's got a little bit more injury concerns. And again, it's kind of splitting hairs between the two. But they're the experts. So whoever, picks one or the other, it's like, you're probably right. To me, Jalen Wright looks like a little bit more of a home run threat. Some of his big runs against those SEC defenses are just wild, man. Like, he ran away from the Georgia defense.
He does. I like him a lot. I think the speed's there. He's definitely more of a home run threat. I think Brooks is the more complete back.
Yes.
I think part of what helped Wright too was they play a real wide open offense. So when he's running, if he gets a hole, there's probably 5 guys in the box where he can run through it, just because they have everybody spread out. So it might be a little bit easier for him to get some of those big chunk plays. But he's got speed, he's got elusiveness. I really like Brooks, but again, he's coming off a torn ACL with the Packers. Draft him. We see guys recovering a lot quicker nowadays from ACLs. It happened, I think, in November. So he might be back by the beginning of the season. Maybe he misses a few games. Do they take that risk? I don't know, because they really haven't done it in the past. But I think he's the best on my board, for whatever that's worth. I think he's the best, most complete back. But I'm with you with Jalen Wright. He's very intriguing, and the home run ability and the speed that he has, it's fun to watch. And we'll see, does it translate to the NFL? Because sometimes you get those guys with the highlight reel and all the big runs in college, and they can't do it in the NFL. So that's interesting.
That's where I don't think that Jalen Wright can do it as RB1, at least not right away.
No.
His vision's not great. He relies heavily on his athleticism, which is not going to serve him as well in the NFL as it did in college. Granted, again, lots of athleticism. Guy's a beast. Yeah. But still, so is everybody else that plays in the NFL. So you can't – anytime you see that, you see guys that just dominate athletically in college, you have to expect that to be tamped down a little bit in the NFL. So that's what I would say. But if he's in a complementary role where a defense is primarily preparing for everybody else at this point, Jordan Love, the host of receivers, Josh Jacobs – yeah, that guy can sneak out and hit some home runs just because the defense is going to have so many other problems. And he could have a very good early career doing that with this offense. So it's just a very intriguing pick to me. Really like Jalen Wright in this situation with the Packers being a compliment to Josh Jacobs and a home run threat. But I think that there's probably some more we could get into next week as far as just kind of diving in a little bit deeper into the running back class, because again, we spent the majority of this podcast on the free agency, which rightfully so is a wild day. But yeah, I would like to spend a little bit more time on it, because there's a lot of guys we're talking about here, big guys, home run guys, all the in between, freak athletes. Can't say enough about Isaac Guerindo's testing. Frank Gore Jr., for crying out loud, we can't not mention him. So yeah, there's a lot of names here in the running back class, and one is probably one that most people haven't heard of. Although in the Midwest, some y'all keep up with the South Dakota State territory, but Isaiah Davis, man, Isaiah Davis looks like a heck of a running back from South Dakota State. So there's a lot to look at, but we'll get into more of it next week when we can spend a little bit more time on it. So. Any final thoughts here, Tim, from this wild day in free agency, man?
Just wonder what else is to come. Do we have more fireworks this week? I don't know. I don't think they're going to be on this level, but who would have thought that they would have had a day like this? Just emotional roller coaster as a Packer fan, but I think they're a better team coming out of this, and it's going to be interesting going through free agency now over the next week or so, and further out even than that, but to see if they're able to build more, well, not build through free agent, but if they're able to go into free agency and bring more guys in to help build out the defense a little more. So, yeah, just a crazy day. Super excited they got McKinney, and sad to see Aaron Jones go at the same time. So a little bittersweet today.
Definitely bittersweet. Very sad to see Aaron Jones go. He's in the Donald Driver caliber of Packer for me, just like upstanding human being, and such a treat to get to watch as a Packer. And again, David Bakhtiari, man, I don't know that anybody carried the G quite as hard as that guy. Like, going out on such a note where you're just flipping the bird to Chicago Bears fans when you kick their ass at Soldier Field. Oh, man. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that moment and all the other great ones. No, I don't know, man. I got to believe when they start this fast that they have other plans. So, yeah, I'd say strap in for tomorrow. But if you're looking at clues to where they might go next, it seems like all the guys that they're bringing in, they have ties to or previous ties to. So, McKinney with Ainsley and Jacobs through Bisaccia, pretty close ties there. So there's ways to look at that. There's some new faces in the building, so it might be hard to keep up with where their ties are, but that's probably one way to figure this out. But like I said before, take predictability and toss it, because they've done pretty much everything just completely unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be exciting to see what they do next. I don't think they're going to top this day, but who knows?
Could be wrong. Could be wrong. I hope that I don't think there's anybody else that we have to worry about departing. Are there any other? This is like a death in Game of Thrones that I've got to brace myself for. Jon Snow's not going to die, is he?
I hope not. I mean, they wouldn't. I saw a tweet today. The last remaining Ted Thompson draft pick is Kenny Clark.
Oh, he's still there. Maybe he's our Jon Snow. Maybe he's the one where he's going to die. No, he can't die.
They can't kill Kenny, can they? I mean, so no, I hope there's nobody else to pardon, but
no, we'll see, man. Strap in, Packers fans. It's gonna be a wild ride if today was any indication.
Yeah, who would have thought?
But no, thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. We really appreciate y'all hanging out with us and tuning in and just talking some Pack with us, and after a wild day like this, we all need this a little bit. And my screensaver's kicking in. This is great. Very, very professional back here. Anyway, we appreciate it. We're long in this podcast anyway. If y'all are still hanging with us, thank you so much. You're fantastic. But check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these different social networks. Pay no attention to what's going on behind the screen here. And follow us, like us, spike that like button here. Subscribe to the PackersTalk.com YouTube channel. And definitely come back and hang out with us again next week, Packers fans. Appreciate y'all, and go Pack. Go!